Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, let's move
No.
on. Brisbane and Port
Here we
Adelaide.
go. Here we go.
Interesting. So pretty much it's all going to come down to the Horn Francis show. Now, very explosive, very dynamic, and hit the scoreboard. One goal, one. Could have, he just tore it apart. Contested ball, winning it from stoppages, and his hunger to compete. And we speak about it, how competitive he is. And I guess a young player gets to get, in mentally, you wanting to compete and not being able to do it, or the team not doing as well as you want them to do, and all of those processes can kind of turn against you. But I thought it was absolutely sensational. I'm waiting to see him do it again away from home, to see if he still has that hunger away from home. So I'm waiting to see. But I know a lot of people are looking at him. People asking like, "Hey, can he average close to 100 for a $350,000 forward mid?" And we had JP say, "Well, yeah, no doubt he can," which I find interesting because obviously JP won last year, so it makes my ears perk up a little bit. I'm waiting to see a little bit about that one, boys. Where are you on the Horn Francis train?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, if the role's there, yeah, is the answer. The question's going to be: is the role going to be able to maintain? Now, we this is the thing that makes me confident about the pick is that we've had the two practice games where he was basically played as a majority CBA midfielder, and now we've had the first official game where he has been played as a majority CBA midfielder, where he had 66% CBAs, which ranked, I think, third. So Rosie, Wines, and then him. The only thing that we really haven't seen is what sort of impact Boak has on his scoring, if at all. And I've had two different sides of the spectrum. Some people saying Boak's going to be a 90% forward. Others saying it's going to be a 50-50 split with Boak. Either way, that probably comes out of something out of him. Or, I mean, Rosie doesn't need 83% CBAs, which is what he had. I mean, he could go down to 60% quite easily, facilitate a few of that. I think to be a successful pick, I want to see him and Boak in the side with 50% CBAs, and I will jump on it. Absolutely. Like, he's in my team that quickly. Um, so what he can average, I think, again, he's probably similar to Zeeble, that sort of 95 to 100 range is, I think, where he probably will be. But he could go higher. He's got the scope and the development. It depends on how Port are. I mean, they just smashed the Lions. If they're going to be top four and win games and then win more
Mm.
Supercoach pie, and they're going to do it with that aggressive midfield style. And a lot of it also comes down to their big three forward line that fires. Like, so some days it fires and some days it doesn't. So, yeah, I mean, I like the pick, but I'm not jumping on it right now. I'm giving it another week, and I think that that's what most people should do. But each to their own. The other consideration is they play the Pies, who obviously traditionally have leaked midfield points. So, is that necessarily do you want to miss that score if you do want him? So I can understand the consideration, because I have considered it. Well, Swizz.
The interesting thing in this game, like 2 minutes before half time, Brisbane were all over Port. And then like I think I talked to the Phantom about this, and he was all like, "No, I don't see Port being a team coming up the ladder, where they're the one that I thought would come up the ladder and win more games this year." Yeah, they had obviously an awful start last year. So if they're going to be winning more games, and that's naturally more of the pie. And we should, the fact that against a team like the Lions, they nearly had 2,000 points. Like, that's massive. That's like, Geelong playing a bottom team of that. So if that's the sort of percentage they can put up against a team that we're very hopeful about in the Lions, like, what could they do at home against some of the lower teams that they have coming up? And it makes me want to own more Port Adelaide players. So if Horn Francis, Butters, Rosie, all of them are playing in the guts, there's no reason why I don't think they all go through the roof, but there's no reason why they can't all be in that sort of 100, early, low 100 range. So it does make me very interested in all of them.
Yeah, interesting. And Rosie, I thought was very impressive around. Could have done a lot better. I thought is there and thereabouts, and just a little off. More from just moments, not that he wasn't there, but just kind of things didn't bounce his way a little bit. But he was someone that definitely could have taken that next step forward as well. So I thought it was very interesting there. Look, and it was pretty much a tale of 3 out of 4 quarters. It was so quarter number one, Port Adelaide came out of the blocks. Quarter two, Brisbane sort of fought back and wrestled and had a lead. And they go and think, oh, we just got to do more of that. And then quarter 3 and 4 was pretty much like bang, like literally foot down. And once you lose the momentum to Port Adelaide in Adelaide, it's really hard. The
Yeah.
crowd there are just absolutely next level, and you have to silence them. And if you don't, then they get that confidence and they just keep taking it on. And we already know with your Butters and your Horn Francis now, and your Rosies, etc. These dynamic sort of forward types. Once they get on the outside or get forward of stoppage, they just go. And it's really, really hard. And they actually use their eyes as well to look for those options, not just bomb it long to a Harris Andrews, but actually try and chip you apart and get close enough to scoring range, Chris.
Yeah, and I mean the big problem that Brisbane are going to have against someone like Port is that they've got the three tall forwards, and you've got one tall defender. So, yeah, and like as good as Harris Andrews is, he's not strong enough for Dixon. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think between Dixon and Hawkins, I don't think there's basically any key defender that's going to be able to beat them in a one-on-one contest in terms of strength. But Dixon basically had his way with him. There were times where um, Andrews tried to play it smarter, gave him a meter because he's obviously not super quick on the lead, Dixon, and tried to use his pace to be able to jump and spoil. But Dixon was just taking him at the highest point and just clunking them, and just his strength didn't allow the punch to impact the mark. So yeah, he was just unfortunately outmatched in the game. Zach Butters, so did have a nice score, and again, only 33% CBA. So exactly like what we said in our preseason pod is that we think he's the one that's going to be playing more forward, maybe a bit more wing. He'll be around the ball at times, of course, but he doesn't need to be in the guts to be able to score well. I don't know if he's one that I absolutely want to get because the role means he's going to have that inconsistent scoring. But I don't mind. I don't hate him. He's an option. They have the first buy. Is that correct? I think the round 12 buy Port. Is that my
No, they have the last one. That's why there's
last one?
the overlap of,
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
That's why we didn't like them because
Yeah.
of
I
the
don't even
overlap. So if
know.
we get Horn Francis, that's another last
Bring
buy
him in.
player that we would be getting in.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, the
Yeah,
good thing
brutal.
about I suppose some of these guys is that they do have obviously mid forward flexibility. Um,
Yep.
that is a thing. Uh,
Um,
I mean, Horn
Brisbane,
Francis is
I
a guy
think.
though that you get on early, and you could buy flip him, and that would be the purpose. So he gets the round 15. You can choose literally any other forward that you want, or any other midfielder, depending on what you want to get. So not the worst of the world. Same, but as though you're picking him up at an elevated, obviously a premium price. You want him for the season, so that's the difference between the two.
Yep, same as like a Zeeble type.
I
Interesting.
was
So
going to add.
Brisbane,
So I was going to add to that, but just quickly before you say Brisbane. Um, I think we underplayed also how big of a thrashing that game was because like they had 400 touches and they had 36 scoring shots. Like if Port had actually kicked straight, and that like what that could have been one of the great thrashings in that. So that and again we're talking it'd be a better opportunity to see how they go against, a strong, well, not a stronger opposition because Brisbane's obviously a very strong team, but now playing away from home, and Collingwood obviously play their home deck very well. But then after that, Port Adelaide do have Adelaide, and then they have West Coast only a couple of weeks after that running. And then as they come into the bye, it's like Saints, Essendon, North. So there's games there where, like, if that's what they can do on their home deck against a team like Brisbane, what could they possibly do against these sort of teams where they're 4, 5, 6 weeks in, and maybe that little bit of the new coach spark has now worn off, and they might be right for the to absolutely get a thrashing. And Port's the sort of team that has shown that they can potentially do that. So that's where Horn Francis, if he is playing guts, he can easily go 25, 30 touches against these players.
well, they're 18 behinds is why Rich was the highest scorer for Brisbane.
Well, that's exactly right.
So I'm assuming he got the most kickouts because I saw him take quite a few, but he had 112
12.
Supercoach points.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's not bad. 12 out of 18. So even
Only
then he had
McKenna had
1,000
4, which is
meters.
interesting, right?
Yep.
That's good. Well, the coach did come out talking about McKenna, which we'll get into just after Richie. 1,000 meters gained, right? So if you take it 12 kickouts and you run and then you boot at 50 meters, I'm like, well, wonderful. There's, what's that, 600 meters gained already.
Yep.
There's some more simple maths for you boys. So it's really interesting there. So that's where that kind of comes in. Dunkley and Neil were both looking extremely on song. I mean, Dunkley was on song so much where Abdul started tweeting early, oh, my C's on Dunkley and like, check out these ribs. Right, absolutely going, absolutely early crow, the old Chris fashion, and that one kind of
I love
fell a bit
early
stale.
crow.
You do love an early crow, and Lockie Neal as well. I thought was they looked good up until half time, but then once the tide flipped, they literally had nothing. And we do need to touch on McKenna because he is someone that we should be looking to get in our sides. Swizz, I owe you for having him in my side because I was looking at Gota and I was like, oh, I'm getting really fancy with myself. And I was like, no, I'll have McKenna with Wilmot so that way I kind of handcuff and I should have at least one of them playing in my side to get me to round 6 because that's what I was worried about, getting to round 6. And I was paranoid enough where I'm like, you know what? I will start McKenna, even though I've shat on him for ages.
Yeah.
And now the coach is coming out and give him a big prop as well. But the one thing I will say, Chris, before I get to you is Tunstall was subbed out of this game because they're not really playing the extra ruck, right? So I'm not worried at the moment because when you have Gunner and Zorko come back in, right? So Dev Robertson had 6 touches, so I think he's probably also the one that makes way with Tunstall. So I am a little bit worried at who gets subbed in the game after those two. So as in the two poorest will be out for Zorko and is it McStay? No, not McStay. He's gone already, isn't it, Daniel?
Yeah, he left.
Anyway, yeah. So, but I think So I'm wondering who's at risk after that point, Chris.
Yeah, just wanted to highlight the absolute drubbing that Port put on Brisbane. So the three, or sorry, the 4 CBA midfielders basically for Brisbane, who you would argue is probably one of, if not the strongest midfield group. Lockie Neal, Josh Dunkley, Hugh McCluggage. So like Neal had 87%, Dunkley had 70, and so did McCluggage. And then Will Ashcroft was the 4th with 47%, so about 50% CBAs. Now, that return netted 19 disposals for Josh Dunkley, 20 disposals for Lockie Neal, 13 disposals for McCluggage, and 13 disposals for Ashcroft. All of those numbers must be, I would say, for Neal, that's probably his poorest showing in since one of the tag games for sure. Like one of the ones where and he wasn't tagged.
Well, the Bombers game
Um,
last year that
they
Benny
just
and I
got
watched, but yeah,
absolutely smashed. Yeah.
they did.
So
They did. And
yeah,
well,
I
the
wouldn't
hard thing
read
is,
so much into that in terms of like their output. Like, yeah, I don't think that they're gonna. I think that there'll be a bounce back. I think that they're gonna have some serious chats this week and work out what they did wrong and then work out how to fix it. I don't think it's going to be a long term. Can't
but the hard
imagine
thing with
Brisbane
that bounce
Lions not
back
being a top 8 team.
is Melbourne this week, mate. Even though they're playing at home, they're playing the D's. Like that's
Beautiful.
already an absolute massive match.
And they should get up for it. I think they rolled into Port Adelaide thinking they were going to roll over the top of them. That's
No,
honestly what my
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, we've
And
brought
then
in
they went,
Dunkley,
wow, this is harder
Gunston,
than I thought it was going to
Ashcroft.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. But
And they
all of a
smashed Geelong
sudden,
in the preseason, you know?
yep. And
I
they
feel
are.
like
They've clearly
I
got
work at
ahead.
Centrelink. I feel like I work at Centrelink, and I'm saying one at a time with the queuing. I think it's interesting. I'm getting flashbacks from this D's game because last year, remember, I went to the D's game. I was like, oh, there's going to be traffic. And then there's going to be traffic this week in Brisbane because you have the Dolphins playing the Broncos. Both are undefeated. So it's going to be anarchy in Brisbane City.
How good are
So
the
last time
Dolphins going?
I went in early. I got my seat nice and early. I went to the German club, had a nice feed, had a Stein. I was like, this is such a great night. And then I watched Melbourne absolutely flog us by like 50 points just before finals. And now we have them again. I'm in this exact same predicament where I'm going in early, probably going to get the German club. So yeah, I think it's going to be an absolutely great show, I think, on Friday night. Either way.
And
Either way, Chris.
just on your point, mate, Daniel Rich had 1,010 meters gained. Just so you know.
Yeah. I
That's
just said
insane.
1,000
Yeah, you
because I
said it.
wasn't going to be a dickhead.
Yeah.
I
But
could see 1,010.
yeah, but all of a sudden,
um,
it's just completely. It could potentially change our whole thinking of Brisbane here because Melbourne's going to be a massive matchup. Then Bulldogs away, then Collingwood for the I think it's the Good Friday Eve game. Of that so all of a sudden it's a massive first month, which could mean like if they don't rebound, like if they were to lose this week, you potentially might be looking at someone like a Neil or a couple of these other guys there, dropping some good cash for us. So those who haven't started some Brisbane players, yeah, they there's big potential that they could find themselves, 1-3, 0-4. So you hope they bounce back because that'll be awesome and awesome footy to watch. But yeah, it does make you now question some of their players in there.
Yeah, and we did
and
say that I
just
think they play 6 home games, I think, in the first 15 or 16 rounds or something, so it's not too much.
yeah.
Wilmot is the other one as well, so good old Wilmot. Did well enough, I think. That 51, I think, is not too bad. I'll take that as a sort of baseline, hopefully. And I think once you get into some wins, And if he can, get into some scoring chains and kind of be really used on that outside with his speed and pace and dare and take on the game, then it wouldn't be too unrealistic to expect maybe some 70s or something out of him at some point, just when Brisbane win.
Well, it should
So
have been a
that's one to look for,
65.
Chris.
There's no way he should have missed that goal. 3 meters out on a 30-meter angle, and he
Oh,
shanked it.
so
So,
bad.
Mhm.
That's right. I tweeted that, didn't I? He will miss this
so
goal.
in Supercoach, you got to remember. So that then counts as a inefficient, not a clanger, but it's inefficient disposal, as opposed to a effective kick and a goal. So you get points for the goal, points for the effective kick. So yeah, that 51 could have been 60 plus 65. So that's his fault, and I won't accept that. But I just want to highlight with McKenna that 4 kickouts, that wasn't a preseason thing. He didn't get any kickouts in the preseason. So whether they've reviewed that, that was going to Coleman. Now, I mean, there's a chance that obviously because Coleman was injured and he only had 68% time on ground, what that was about. Now, were those kickouts after he was subbed? Was he subbed or was he just taken off? He was
No, he
subbed, wasn't
wasn't
he?
subbed. He was taken off.
He just taken off. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd have to think, okay, well, was it the plan going in Connor McKinnon getting kickouts? Because if so, then he's an absolute must-have rookie, and everyone needs to jump on.
Well,
Or was
Chris,
it?
I
Or
didn't see the
Coleman was
start of the
around.
game, but did Coleman start off the bench? Is that correct?
Yeah, Kitty Coleman did. Yeah.
Yeah. So McKenna's the first choice ahead of him at the moment.
Well, first choice is Rich, and then
Yeah,
McKenna.
but second choice if you want to say it, put it that way. But yeah,
So yeah, I assume so. Yeah, if Coleman's the seventh off the bench, and they all rotate through, then at some point McKenna's going to get kickouts. Then it might not be a lot. Obviously, with 18 behinds, that's quite a considerable amount.
huge.
You probably don't get that too much, but so he got 4 out of 18. What's that? 20%, 22% or something like that. Not bad. Look, it's something for nothing. It's more points than he was going to get, so I don't hate it.